Hello, this is FTHS Airs coming at you live.
Hi, I am Gabriella Beam.
And I am Jordan Broadbent, your flight attendant on your trip this afternoon.
Buckle up for safety, there might be some turbulence.
Have a safe flight and enjoy.
Hold on, passengers, we are traveling back to 1650 when the French Enlightenment was occurring.
If you look out your windows of the craft, you may see the guillotine. Hopefully no citizens are in there right now.
The guillotine was a machine created during the French Enlightenment to behead citizens. There is a tall frame which is weighed, and then an angled blade is held at the top and quickly dropped to take off the head of the person secured on the bottom. Okay.
The Enlightenment transformed almost all of Europe, causing dramatic changes in the church as well as new development in scientific technology.
The French Enlightenment was also called the Age of Reason because it was a time when new ideas were introduced based off of reason. The philosophers and scientists that thought of these new ideas included John Locke, Sir Isaac Newton, Voltaire, and many more.
Locke was a British philosopher who made central contributions to the development of liberalism. His theory of the government by the consent of the governed as a means to protect life, liberty, and the state strongly influenced the United States founding documents.
During this time period, citizens became enlightened and more well-rounded. They came up with new ideas and inventions that would make the society more advanced overall. Oftentimes, people were referred to as Renaissance men, which is a term that refers to a well-rounded citizen.
One person that was considered a Renaissance man was Johannes Gutenberg. Gutenberg was the inventor of the printing press. The printing press played a key role in the Age of Enlightenment. It allowed for more people to have the ability to read, and it allowed for the spread of news and ideas more quickly. Johannes Kepler was a German mathematician, astronomer, and astrologer. He is best known for his laws of planetary motion.
The laws of planetary motion are 3 laws that describe the movement of planets around the sun.
These works provided a foundation for Isaac Newton's theory of universal gravitation.
John Locke was another philosopher of the Enlightenment.
He is known as the father of classical liberalism.
John Locke was a believer of natural rights, which are reflected in the Declaration of Independence.
Locke believed that your mind was born a blank slate, or tabula rasa. Another person involved in the Enlightenment was Voltaire.
Voltaire was a French writer, historian, and philosopher, famous for his attacks on the Catholic Church and his beliefs of freedom of religion, freedom of expression, and the separation of church and state.
Back when Carolus Linnaeus and Isaac Newton were making their great discoveries, people like them were known as natural philosophers. Today, they would be called scientists. Philosophers are people who seek wisdom or knowledge. During the Enlightenment, while natural philosophers sought to understand natural things, such as the motion of the planets or the behavior of microscopic organisms, other philosophers concentrated on the mind, political subjects, and other more abstract concepts as well. One of the most important philosophers to focus on political subjects was an Englishman named John Locke, who lived from 1632 to 1704. Locke believed that the power of a government to rule must come from the consent of the governed. In other words, that people should be able to choose who governs them. Locke took comfort in England's glorious revolution of 1688, in which the king was forced to relinquish a large amount of his power to parliamentary representatives. He promoted the idea that every human being was born with 3 basic natural rights: those of life, political equality or liberty, and the ownership of property. Locke also promoted freedom of the press, educational reform, and religious tolerance, and called for the overthrow of governments that failed to protect basic human rights. In France, several great Enlightenment philosophers wrote passionately about human rights and democracy as well. French philosopher Voltaire, for example, championed the idea of freedom of speech with his famous statement, "I disapprove of what you say, but will defend to the death your right to say it." While another Frenchman, Montesquieu, called for a complete separation of powers to maintain balance in government, which was to be accomplished by creating separate legislative, executive, and judicial branches of government. Nearly all philosophers of the Enlightenment era wanted to see a strict separation of church and state as well, for they realized that mixing government and religion was almost always a recipe for disaster. The Enlightenment philosophers themselves were usually deists, people without traditional religious beliefs, who believed in what they called nature's God. That is, in an all-powerful spiritual force that had created the universe and everything in it, but then left it alone. The ideas of the Enlightenment philosophers were deeply admired by the leaders of both the American and French revolutions. In fact, Thomas Jefferson fell back on them time and time again when he was composing the Declaration of Independence, as did the framers of the United States Constitution when they worked out a plan of government for the new American democracy.
Thank you for flying with FTHS Airlines. We hope you enjoyed your long journey back in time during the Enlightenment.
Hopefully you learned a lot on this trip. Now welcome back to reality.